Hello, everyone. My name is Debbie Hayes. Thank you for joining us this evening for At World of Pets podcast. You know, we want our pets to live a long time because we want to be able to enjoy them, but we want it to be a great quality of life. So, to that end, at World of Pets podcast, we do talk all things about animals so that we can give them a better quality of life. And here with my co-host is our guest Rosemary. And fellas, take it away.
Awesome. Rosemary, welcome. Anthony, welcome again. As usual, it's always a pleasure to be with you to inquiry and question our guests. Rosemary, give us a little bit of background. So we're gonna talk about pet and human interaction and communication tonight. Where would you like to start on that?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. First of all, I am a psychotherapist and I've been doing psychotherapy for about 20 years. I specialize in highly sensitive people, which is a kind of interesting niche. It's not a well-known, I don't think, mainstream kind of idea, but there's some books out there on high sensitivity. Um, And I think the phrase was coined by a woman named Elaine Aron. And they did some research. She and her husband are researchers, and they found that about 20% of the population are what you could call highly sensitive. And when I heard that, I was like, that sounds like me. I've always been just very sensitive and many physically and also emotionally. And also, psychically, I've been kind of psychic all my life, and so I kind of made that my niche, and it's really a wonderful niche, helping people understand their sensitivity and have a rich and rewarding life. Um, and I think that animals are highly sensitive by nature. There's a range. Obviously, there's kind of a scale, and you can find them that are very, very sensitive, and some that are not quite as sensitive. But I found that you can communicate with them if you know how to. So I kind of wanted to talk about, first of all, how you can have a conversation or have some kind of back and forth with an animal, and I have a story I thought I could tell that you might find interesting.
Absolutely. We love stories here. That's why we're here.
Okay, very cool. So animals are, especially I'm a dog lover. I have two dogs. I never had dogs until I got married, and I married my husband in my early 40s, um, because my family was not big on animals. My mother was always like, I don't want to get fur around the house and stuff like that. So she was, kind of a neat freak, and so we never had any animals. And I never got any after I left home because I thought I'm going to fall in love with these guys, and then they're going to leave me, and I won't be able to handle it. But when I got married, my husband already had two dogs, and so I don't know. I've always had an affinity for animals. I've been a vegetarian since I was in my 20s. I've always had the feeling that animals are a lot more sentient and feel things a lot more than we give them credit for. And I remember as a young child, I grew up in New Jersey, and we used to go to the Jersey Shore every summer. And some of the family members would a bunch of us would go and rent cabins together, and some of the family members would go what they call crabbing, which is to get crabs on a line, kind of like fishing, but they would get crabs and lobster, and they would bring them home, and they'd all be sort of flailing around in a pail or something, and then they'd put a big pot of water on the stove, and they'd put them in there live. And I swear to you, I heard them screaming. And that was it. I was like, I'm not eating uh, that thing, that, you know, that crab or that lobster, forget it. I will not put that in my mouth. And when I got a little bit older, I just said, okay, I'm not going to eat animals at all. And I've always just felt like they are not really just there for us to use, that they have personalities and they want to live. Even a fly wants to live, you know. Animals have that urge. And I personally, I feel like they need to be treated with a lot of respect. And so when I married my husband, and we, you know, I was getting used to them and they were getting used to me. They didn't, he had two little American Eskimo puppies, really cute. And, but they were, you know, they were trying to figure me out when I first got there. And then there were 4th of July um, things happening, noise happening outside of our home, people putting off fireworks. And I saw these two little guys looking very frightened. And everybody wanted to go out and see the fireworks. And I said, no, I'm going to stay here with the dogs. And I stayed and I held them. I got out, down on the floor, and I held them for, it seemed like hours, I don't know. And we bonded. And they were then my dogs, you know. And I think that the number one thing is having respect for them, that they do have feelings, they have thoughts, they have personalities, and we can, one way to get to them is to be sensitive to who they are, what they need. If it had been another dog who didn't care, maybe I would have gone out and listened to the fireworks, but I stayed in because they looked scared to me, and I wanted to make sure that they were okay. And they were frightened. So to me, the number one way is to communicate with them, is to kind of get on a wavelength with them. Then some years later, I learned, and I'm not sure where I learned this, that you can communicate with animals easily through sending them mental pictures, because they're very psychic. Dogs and cats especially, and horses. Horses are very, very sensitive beings. But dogs and cats, most people have a dog or a cat. And if you send them a picture of what you're trying to say to them with words, they get it much, much more quickly. And so I got in the habit of doing that, like showing them, if we're going to go for a ride, I might say the word ride, but I might also show them a picture in my head of the car, getting in the car, and they would get that. And so, you know, if you get on the wavelength of a dog or a cat, I find that there's always kind of a request. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this idea, but you know, they're always looking at me like, can I have a treat? Can I go out? Can I go for a walk?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to poop. I got to pee. You know, can I get in your lap? You know, they've always got a request to me. I mean, it seems like there's always this flow of requests, and I have to be able to say no, or else it would kind of drive you crazy. But it's sweet, you know, that they know that they can trust me. They know that I'm going to listen when they ask me something. And sometimes I'll say, go ask Papa. Like if they want to go for a walk, I'll say, go ask Papa. And they know that, and they'll go and they'll kind of, you know, look at him. But he isn't quite as sensitive as I am, so sometimes he doesn't pick it up. I know I miss a lot too. I mean, I'm sure I don't get it all, but it's very rewarding to me to have that kind of relationship with them, that we can kind of have an exchange. You know, sometimes I say words, sometimes I just send them pictures. But they seem to understand, and they respond. So I don't know if you have any questions about that. I'll kind of take a break here and see if you have anything you want to ask me about that.
Anthony?
Me? No, I was busy looking up an American Eskimo puppy. Those are cute dogs.
Oh yes.
So cute.
So the question that I asked, I mean, it's actually not really a question, but a common experience is that I did start visualizing things when I was trying to give commands and train my dogs, and it's very effective. You know, especially with my dog being born with one eye and couldn't see out the other, and then me losing an eye. Somewhere along the path of that training, we bonded like even deeper, and like even towards the end of his 16-year life, it was very clear that there was a mental connection between the two of us, and even other people could see it. So uh, yeah. So Anthony, any thoughts on that?
I mean, I've heard people talk about the sensitivity of animals. Like you said, most people have dogs. I've heard people talk about like, oh, dogs don't have any emotions. I've literally seen a dog cry when it's gotten in trouble over doing something. My mom had this puppy and it chewed something up, and I mean, she didn't abuse it or anything, but she got onto it and she lectured it and she put her finger in it. And that dog said, and I swear a tear came down. It was like, I mean, they've got feelings, man. And that dog knew, like, I screwed up, and it was crying.
Yeah. They're a lot more like us than we want to believe. That's what I think. I think that we're not, as a culture, we're not super enlightened about animals, not just pets, but animals in general. I ran into a situation. We were on a vacation in Hawaii, and there was a store owner who had a pig as a pet, and he kept it out in front of the store. And I guess, it was there to kind of lure people to come into the store. But I never got into the store. I kind of got down and nose to nose with that pig. And I just fell in love with that pig. And ever since then, I've been a huge fan of pigs. I could look in that pig's eyes and I could see it communicating with me. I could see that it had feelings. I could see that it had thoughts. I could see that it was really appreciating that I was down on its level and we were, communing with each other instead of, somebody like way up tall kind of walking by. And I didn't want to leave. I don't know how long I spent, just sitting there with that pig. And it was so clear to me how very intelligent it was. They say that a pig is like a 3-year-old child. They're amazing. And and I see a lot of vegan things online of people saying, why do you think that, your dog is different from a pig, or a cow? They're smart. They're communicating. I think there are different levels of intelligence, but they certainly are a lot more like us than we'd like to think. It's my take on it. It actually is. It grieves me the way we treat animals in this country. So much meat eating. It's just not necessary. We're kind of, I think, brainwashed into thinking that we have to eat meat. I haven't eaten meat in many, many years, and I'm very healthy. So,
Well, let me ask you this: when you have those encounters, what emotions are you feeling, and are they projecting a like a picture into you as part of your communication? What does that look like?
well, it doesn't seem definitive to me. It's more like I get a sense of the being itself, not so much words or, I want to drink of water or something. I remember getting anything like that from the pig. It was more like, I like you. I want to spend time with you. This is nice.
Mhm.
Would you rub under my chin here? Like kind of like that. Like I want to, it seemed very anxious to make connection is how it felt. And just kind of being in that flow with that animal is very magical to me. It's sort of transcendent, you know. It's a peak experience to me. Um, and so, but I want to tell you this story about the horse. because it was probably the most amazing thing that I've ever experienced with an animal. Unless you have something else you want to interject.
Well, I was going to ask you about that story because we were talking about that in the pre-show production meeting, and I was going to ask about this communication. Is it like with humans where it's a two-way street, right? Communication isn't just a one-way thing. But I mean, communication with humans, for example, doesn't have to be verbal. There's body language, there's facial expressions, there's that kind of stuff. So is that what we're talking about with animals? Maybe this story about the horse will answer that question.
The they say, as a psychologist, I find this very interesting. They say that 90 to 95% of communication is nonverbal. The impressions that you get, the feelings that you get with a person are not actually verbal, though our brains are very attuned to words, which would be the conscious mind. The subconscious mind, which is more about emotions and body sensations and intuition and imagination, is actually much more powerful than we give it credit for. So, if you meet somebody, you might say, I didn't like that person's outfit or something like that, or I didn't like the way they talk, or I didn't like when they said a certain thing. But if you really sit with it and feel it, you might find that there's something about this person that I can't put my finger on. I just don't resonate with that person.
Yep.
So it's kind of an energy thing, And one of the things that I realized with the horse was something about their energy, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But horses, like you were talking before about the equine, that was Anthony, right? About the equine camp. So that actually was something that I was participating in. The reason they do these camps, like especially for kids. Oh, hi. Kids with behavioral issues, is that and I don't know, maybe people know this, maybe it's commonly known, but therapy with horses is very informative to kids who are having relationship issues or behavioral issues, because they are extremely sensitive to your energy. So if you have a violent thought, the horse is not going to come near you. My understanding about the way they evolved is that they don't have sharp teeth. They don't have claws, right? They don't have weapons to protect themselves. So they developed this very keen psychic ability to know if they were safe or not. So they would hear things or see things or sense things way before anybody else would. And, they will move. They'll get out of harm's way. And it's a survival mechanism that developed over who knows how many centuries. And so horses are extremely sensitive to your mood. And that's why they use them for troubled people, especially teens, because if they come in with anger or even anxiety or fear, it's hard to bond with them, because they're very defensive. It's like, I have to take care of myself here and you don't feel safe to me. So the kid learns to come in with a kind energy. And when they come in with kindness and open-heartedness, the horse will come to them. And that's what they want. They want to bond with the horse. And so it's mirroring to the kid how they're coming across. That even if they're not saying I'm angry, and even if they're not acting angry, if they're feeling it, or if they're thinking a violent thought, that is actually picked up, not just by horses, but by every sentient being, especially humans. And so it teaches them that how they think and how their inner life basically is actually felt by the outer world. And if you want to have good relationships, you need to be peaceful, you need to be calm. So that's why they use horses, because they're perfect mirrors for people's internal state. Is that obvious? I mean, that makes sense?
It does make great sense, actually. Similar context is to meet a dog for the first time, and then suddenly you have the goosebumps go up your spine. Next thing you know, that dog is freaked out and wants to bark or run away or get aggressive with you. So I get that. I get that feeling. It's not only mental, it has a physical reaction to your body, and
Yeah.
that's what's being exchanged.
Yes, because we're
Rosemary, if you can see the ticker on the bottom of the screen, that's questions. I don't know if
okay.
it's from our viewers or who, but that's a question.
Okay. So the question is, what are animals most often trying to tell their humans that we tend to ignore or misinterpret?
That's a good question, actually.
It's a really good question. I would go back to the idea that they want to be understood. As a therapist, they say that's the number one thing that heals people. And I have a lot of tools as a therapist that I use to work with trauma and things like that. But I think that bottom line is people go to a therapist because they want to be seen and heard. And I think that animals feel that way too. They want to be seen and heard. And I get the sense that there's frustration that we think that because they can't talk words, we're not listening to their language. They're constantly showing us things with their bodies. If we look, how their ears are their ears perked up or are they back? I mean, that's a huge communication. Is their tail up? Is their tail down? Is their body relaxed? Is it not relaxed? They're always showing us things with their body. So my dogs, when they want to go out, they go over to the door. It's like, okay, let me out. I mean, that's an obvious one. But I think that because they don't have words, we tend to not notice their language and how they're constantly trying to communicate with us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it's a frustration for them.
Well, and we can all get into different situations and even thinking back, you're talking about body language, tail up, tail down, tail tucked, ears back, ears up, all that kind of stuff. I've walked up to animals that were already afraid of me, and then they bucked up, and then by the time I got down to their level and showed them that I was here in peace and pet them and scratch them appropriately and under the chin and let them sniff me, that's a big part of learning how to communicate with animals too. I don't have any really real experience with horses, but I have a lot of experience with dogs, and everywhere from getting bit in the face by a very large dog that was trying to kill my dachshund. So, but it's I was able to react ahead of time to all these situations to put it, into a communicable. I would say, a way to communicate in the future with that animal.
Right.
And so they're all different, just like people. Some people are going to be peaceful 100% of the time. Some won't.
Right.
And that's the same thing with animals for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I noticed that the time is going. We only have like 4 minutes left, right?
Yeah. Tell us how we can help
Tell
you
the
out.
story in 4 minutes. The story was that I was in a training for therapists, and we were at an equine place where they do trainings with horses. And there was, I probably only can tell you the first part. Maybe if I come on again, I'll tell you the second part. But the first part was that the exercise that we were given was one at a time, people would go into the corral and without words or touching them, You could move your body, but you couldn't touch them. Get the horse to come to you. And so I didn't go in the corral. Not everybody got a chance, but people were going into the corral, and they had this horse there who she said was one of her lead horses and was a very sensitive horse. And so people were standing there. They were like gesturing to them, and the horse would not come. Several people got into the corral. The horse would not come. Now, I knew that there was this thing about sending animals pictures. And so I was sitting on the outside. I never got into the corral, but I was sitting on the outside, and I was showing the horse that I wanted it to come. I was visualizing the horse walking over to me and coming. And the horse, there was another person in the corral trying to get its attention. The horse looked up and started sauntering over to me like, what do you want? It came up to the fence, as there was a high fence, came up to the fence, and it put its head right up to the fence, because their eyes are on either side of their heads, right? And so I have this eyeball staring at me going, what do you want? And I said, well, I just wanted to meet you and connect with you and get to know you a little bit. And he said, well, I'm here now, let's just hang out for a little bit. That was interesting that you called me over, and I kind of like you. And we just kind of sat there looking at each other for a long time. And finally he said, thank you, I'm done. And he sauntered away. And it was really amazing to me that, he kind of showed us that this idea of sending a picture to an animal actually is very effective. So I guess I'll leave it there. There's a whole other part of it, which is very fascinating, but I can't tell it. And I just want to leave that message with people, if people are watching and want to know about how to improve their relationships with their pets. It's not just what you say. It's not just what you feed them. It's how you are with them. And are you respectful? Are you paying attention to them, that they have needs and wants and a desire to be understood just like humans do?
Sure. Anthony, any final questions?
No, I think that was good stuff. Appreciate you coming on. And this baby girl decided to join us. She wanted to be here for the show.
Lovely.
She heard we were having Rosemary on, and she's like, I'm coming.
Well, I thought you just grew a new beard.
I think Rosemary sent her an invitation. Now here comes the cat. The cat's about to walk across.
All
the
right.
All of my animals are here to the show tonight.
Yeah, my dogs are at the door going, hey.
The cat actually belongs to my daughter. But yes.
Wonderful. Well, Rosemary, it's so nice to have you on. Definitely want to have you back. I want to hear the rest of that story. We love to learn how to communicate with animals. This is a pet and human wellness channel. So communication with people is very important as well, too. But I love your stories. I love the way, you're teaching us to help communicate. I've got real life experience that really matches and resonates with your stories today. And I really appreciate you being on. So with that, go to debspets.com. That's DEBSPETS.com. It's on the scroll below. Anthony, final words. You got to close us out.
We just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody, or Happy Hanukkah, or whatever. Enjoy your holiday break. We hope that you will join us next year for new content and all new format and content. We look forward to it. And as always, if you need anything, please reach out to us. We'd rather have a 3 a.m. conversation with you than to hear your name in the headlines a couple hours later. So please feel free to reach out and let us do what we can to help.
Very good. God bless you all.